From the United Nations headquarters in New York, this is Disarmament Today.
Welcome to the Disarmament Today podcast, created by the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA. My name is Soo Hyun Kim, your host for today's podcast, and I'm a political affairs officer leading Youth for Disarmament Initiative in UNODA. Today's podcast is being released during the annual 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. This year's theme is Be the Change, aiming to inspire people to make a difference in their communities. In the United Nations studio today, I am joined by two special guests who traveled all the way from South Sudan and Washington D.C., who will share with us their stories of making an impact in the world by changing minds from bullets to books. Let me turn to our special guests. For those who may not know, could you please introduce yourselves and the work you do?
Thank you so much, for having us here. And my name is Jok Abraham Thon. I'm from South Sudan. I'm the founder of Promised Land Secondary School, Juba, South Sudan.
My name is Gail Prensky. I'm from Washington, D.C. I am the creator, executive producer, and director of the Jüdische Kulturbund project, which explores issues of oppression and response through music and art.
Jok Abraham Thon is the founder and director of the Promised Land Primary and Secondary School in Juba, South Sudan. He founded the school at age 26 with a mission to changing minds from bullets to books, to build peace and unity through education in South Sudan. Since its establishment in 2016, 700 students who have been affected by conflict have graduated and 420 of those have gone on to university. Promised Land opened its primary school section for children who were affected by the recent floods that wreaked havoc on vulnerable communities or children that are otherwise internally displaced. In 2020, 60 young students from Mangala Internally Displaced Person Camp were able to finish their primary education thanks to scholarship offered by Promised Land. Could you tell us about how you met and how your worlds intertwined and evolved into Bullets to Books initiative?
Yes, thank you so much. I met Gail in 2018 when I was a Mandela Washington Fellowship fellow in Washington, D.C. So my roommate was from Rwanda, and his name is Cheese Muragwa. Mm-hmm. And Cheese had his friend who was in D.C. called Patrick. And so Patrick came to me one day and he asked me what I was doing in South Sudan, and I told him about the Promised Land Secondary School and changing mind from bullet to book and my life in the camp, in the refugee camp, and all the activities that I was doing in the country. And so he just went like that, and he said, that's really very good, not knowing that he also had a friend called Gail. Mm. So in the evening, I was called that somebody want to meet you, and I was like, okay. So I went and I met Gail Prensky, seated in the lobby of Omni Hotel, and I shared with her my story, and she shared with me her story, and that was really the beginning of all the effort of changing mind from bullet to book initiative. Yeah. So, and from there we moved on. She came to South Sudan, and they started documenting the bullet to book documentary in their school and doing workshops to the artists and musicians in the country. And then they came back, and then they produced the bullet to book documentary, which is talking about changing mind from bullet to book.
Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Gail, do you have anything else that you want to share? Your side of the story?
I sure do. So from my perspective, it was really cool because what we do on the Jüdische Kulturbund project is connect current-day artists around the world to the story of Jewish artists in Nazi Germany. That's in 1933 when they were fired from their jobs because of who they were. And so when I was talking to Patrick saying one of the countries that we don't have yet is South Sudan in our collection. And he says, oh, my partner from Rwanda is part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and his roommate in the hotel is this guy from South Sudan. You must meet him. Next day, in the Omni, I'm sitting, and Jok, for all of you who can't see Jok, he's 6 foot 6 inches tall, and he has this aura of an angel. And it was like that. And at the end of our conversation, like he said, we needed to work together. And so the first two things that I did was to call up my producing partner at the time and say, let's work on this. He said, let's do a documentary. And the second thing I did is to find an architect that could work with Jok in building permanent structures at Promised Land, and his name is Moses Mawa. And that's what happened. It was amazing.
Wow. How one conversation and one meeting leads to another. And I recall that President Nelson Mandela, he said, the most powerful weapon is to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
It's amazing that how that one meeting and one conversation turned into an initiative. Jok, you've spoken passionately about the role and potential of young people to act as positive agents of change. How can education help empower youth, especially girls, as global transformers?
Thank you so much for this great question. As somebody who is from South Sudan and the world's youngest country, illiteracy rate is at 75%, and the conflict is at higher rate, and girls are mostly affected when it comes to education and rights. And so when I founded Promised Land Secondary School in 2016, my goal was to change their minds from bullet to book, to empower young people to be strong followers of peace and unity, and to lead by example. And seeing I established the school, I did a number of campaigns, bringing the parents on board to convince them on how the girls are also valuable like boys. And what was so difficult was cultural interference. There's too much belief in culture that give the girls a low chances of progressing in school because they are seen as something that can be married off. So my target was to tell them that the girls are also valuable. And one parent approached me when we were having that conversation, and he said, I need my daughter to just go to school. I don't need her to continue with these cultural practices. No one will marry my daughter until she finishes. And this was a great outcome of our campaign because he understood that girls can also be more important than boys, or they can be as equal as boys. So this could be one of the ways that young people can be agent of change in the societies across the world. It doesn't matter where you are, but what you need to see the problem in your society and how you intervened in changing that problem, because change cannot happen until you do something. So this call is to change the mindset of the young people, to believe in their abilities, not to just demand, but to be doing something. And I always say that leadership cannot be inherited. You can learn leadership. So young people can learn leadership by doing something small in the society. And that small thing can change a world in one person. And that is a great contribution to the global peace, as I can say.
Right. Jok, you're a member of the #YouthNumber4 Disarmament Initiative. This initiative was launched in 2019 by the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs in recognition of the importance of young people to bring about change. The initiative just celebrated its 2-year anniversary and seeks to engage, educate, and empower young people with the aim of facilitating their meaningful and inclusive participation in the disarmament field. By providing an array of creative and educational activities, young people of all interests, expertise, and backgrounds have been invited to participate in various disarmament efforts. So how did you come across UNODA's Youth for Disarmament Initiative, and what prompted you to become a member?
So I'm really excited to be a member finally, because this has been my call since the days I was in South Sudan, because I see less effort in doing a professional and helpful disarmament or a lasting disarmament in my country specifically, as a country that has been at war for so long. And so I was just looking online, and I just got it. And I was like, let me try if they can reach out. And to my surprise, you got back to me, and I was, okay, that's really cool. And because my interest was, how can I really join the UN and also put my voice in? How can I help? How can my idea help other young people and policymakers across the world? Because I've witnessed a lot of unfruitful disarmament. I call them like that because our government has been doing numerous disarmament exercises, but the arms still go to the young people. There's still cattle raiding, child abduction, a lot of things that happened. And this is because there is no alternative disarmament. What I call by alternative disarmament is take the guns, give them something valuable that can change their life and become a passion in their life. Don't just take gun and leave them idle. So our government has been doing disarmament and leave the young people idle. So one of the ways that I could propose is disarm the young people by changing the way of life, giving them entrepreneurship and vocational training. This will change their path of life. So as a member, I really need policymakers and the young people to just try to be positive agents of productive exercises in their society.
So what are the opportunities you had with the Youth for Disarmament Initiative, and how have you been able to introduce some of these activities into the classrooms of your school in South Sudan?
So one of the activities was the peace as a theme, and changing the minds from all the negative things, and of course conflict resolutions. So currently in the school now we have Peace Club, and this was as a result of my participation in the program and trying to read more about what other young people are doing, who are the members. And now it has really helped us because the country is going through a lot of tribal conflict. So it has helped me bring the young people together and believe in their abilities. So it is something that I can really propose, that young people can be members of this great platform.
A lot of your creative and interactive workshops invite students from different countries to discuss and share their personal stories with one another. Why is this important, Jok?
It is really very important. This happened when Gail, during the pandemic, I can say, during the pandemic, Gail proposed. She was just like, what if we let people hear about how they are doing with the pandemic, like knowing across the world how the people going through the pandemic, and which I saw was something good, because the way we understood pandemic in our country was like something not real. People were like ignoring it, and connecting people to other parts of the world will open their eyes and see this is a deadly disease, and we need to do this and that so that we stay out of it. And this it led us to the exchange program as well, which was the cultural stories, where our girls were part of the program that Gail initiated with girls in Baltimore and Sweden. So they learn a lot of issues, and I would really love Gail to take over from here, because she's really passionate about the cultural exchange program. And I'll add from there. I think, Gail, if you can talk a little bit about the connection of our girls and the girls in the Baltimore, that would be good.
Thanks, Jok. And he's right. I am passionate about this. I'm a storyteller. I believe that we all have amazing stories to share. And the pandemic really opened up the opportunity for us to use our digital storytelling techniques to connect these girls from all over the world. That wouldn't be affordable otherwise. And I really need to thank the internet for this. It makes it very possible. And I would say that there are a lot of things that happen through storytelling and what we're doing, the girls have a chance to not necessarily travel physically, but to be in each other's places. We met on Zoom, and we started working not just on written stories, but to then translate them using music, using visual art, using movement. And we worked with these amazing professional artists and teachers. So it was very multi-generational. We also had college interns. And what came out of this was shared experiences. The pandemic, everybody's affected by the pandemic. So it's shared experiences, but also empathy, because we all experience it differently as well. We have different resources. And at the end of this, it combined all of these stories and experiences into 3 programs, 3 productions that these girls made.
Wow.
And we're going to do it again and again and again. And we are going to expand because different people from different countries are finding this out. The boys want to do it too. So we've got to figure out a way to include the boys, right, Jok?
Yeah. The girls are like, why girls? Can we also learn about boys in the U.S.? And this was a great question, because if we need to also empower the girl child, we also need to have, as we had a conversation before, Soo. So it is also another thing that we can do. And when I go back to South Sudan, I will select some boys who can also participate in the program. And this will also help them become global transformers.
Right.
Yes, and also respect girls, because they need to understand what are the challenges of girls. Why do we need to support girls, so that they will stand firm to support girls as well.
Right, absolutely. We tend to only focus on one side, but I think it's really important that we balance it and also get the support of the boys for the girls.
Yeah.
So this is fascinating.
And one example is like if you want people to be balancing in cooking, you cannot say girls should not cook when boys don't know how to cook.
Yes.
So it's giving equal opportunity so that boys know how to cook, so that girl can take rest.
And actually, that's something that we will do next year. We do theme-oriented programs, and I want to focus on food, because food is another way to connect people from around the world. But we can also talk about techniques of cooking, which is very creative, and it tells a lot about each other's cultures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important to start from what brings us together.
Yeah.
And I think food is a very important and good theme.
Yeah.
And it's also really good to know about that, really good things also happen during this time, despite the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so, Gail, going back to these sessions, what are some of the key takeaways from students and teachers who have attended your workshops?
Every time we do one, whether it's middle school, high school, college, there's one word that is said every time: inspiring. And I think that what Jok really brings to everyone that meets him is, while South Sudan is the youngest country in the world, 70% of the population is under the age of 30. Jok is 31 years old. He's the oldest of the youth. They are so inspired by how incredible, resilient, loving he and others are from South Sudan. I know I feel that way. I think in addition to inspiration, I would just love to read to you from this 8th grader from the City Springs Middle School in Baltimore. Last week said, "People should stop violence and shooting." I think that the kids in Baltimore need to hear this message, because there are a lot of young kids who are in the streets and are doing a lot of things that are not going to help them succeed in life. Jok can show them the way, and I hope he just continues. I mean, the global transformer movement that he's growing can impact not just the kids in South Sudan, but kids in America and around the world.
That's so inspiring. And I know that, your workshops also incorporate art, music, and filmmaking to engage young students on key topics related to disarmament, peace, and security. Jok, what is the value of music and advocacy for peace and unity?
Well, this is one of the greatest ways of creating change. For example, in South Sudan, we are facing a lot of challenges, and there's a need to pass the information and messages of peace across the country. We are a country that has been affected by tribal conflict, and so there's a need to unite the tribal parties, or we call them like that. And music has become one of the tremendous ways of having voices heard. And when Gail came to South Sudan and she had a workshop, we brought together all the artists in South Sudan, and they learned from each other. They built trust, because one of the problems they were facing was trust. Because if you disclose what you are doing to somebody you don't know, it's like it's going to leak out your information and you'll be in problem. So this helped them build a trust and to know that they are working together for a common good. And that was the foundation of all the union in South Sudan. And we collaborated with a lot of youth-led organizations. And one of our greatest theme song, that is a global movement now, was our partnership with a group called I Am Peace and Anataban. And these are youth-led organizations in the country. So now they have gained confidence that their voice is what the world need to hear, not their weaknesses, not their division. So we also have artists, and they have been doing a lot of artwork across the street, passing information of coronavirus, peace building, and disarmament. So this has been so good, and our kids are so inspired. They have been taking part of these activities now, and they have been taking a lot of been participating in festivals. We have, and even the music video of the Bullet Book, our students are the one who acted in that. So there's a change that is happening in the students. Yeah,
that's really wonderful. And so, Gail, perhaps you could elaborate further on how culture exchanges and digital storytelling help engage, educate, and empower young people on issues related to peace and security and unity.
I would say it opens up their world. When we started, Jok's students didn't have any technology, and it's still a challenge getting the data bundle.
Yeah.
We have to help with that. But what it is doing, it is giving them voice, I think. It is powerful in healing their trauma and in hearing how other people around the world live their lives. Again, the commonality, the connection. But, music and art are universal languages.
True.
And it speaks from the heart, and that's the most important thing for us. A lot of people can talk intellectually about how to solve all of this, but if you feel good inside and you're healing, you will behave in a loving way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, right. Giving the voice to the voiceless and joining the voices together for unity, for peace and security.
Exactly.
That's really fantastic work that you're doing. So finally, I'm sorry that we're coming to the final question already, but what are your messages for all the young people listening today? Gail?
I think Jok will say it best, but what I love that he says is be strong followers and connect together around the world so that you can be strong leaders for peace and unity to make this world a better place.
Thank you. And Jok?
Yeah, so what I can tell the young people is not to wait for things to be done for them. They should demand, they should show it by doing something positive. They should join hands globally, and they should value their efforts. This will be one of the greatest ways. And as Gail said, we can never be change agent when we are not examples of change. And by doing what I'm doing in South Sudan, it tells the people that say it as this is what I need to see. And They will not ask me, what do you want? And most of the young people across the world are asking leaders to include them in politics, like to include them in policy making. But this is something you can never ask. It's by doing something, that's where you ask. You cannot just talk on the street. So let young people across the world start to do positive things. If you care about climate, try to raise movement, mobilize your young people in your village, plant trees, raise your emotions. And this is how you show what you need to see. Don't just talk. Tell us how it is done so that people see what is done. And as I talk in South Sudan about disarmament, I need to tell them that a permanent disarmament is when we give young people valuable skills so that they forget guns. And if their lives still rely on guns, they will still use the guns. They can get all means to get the guns to them, and they continue killing people. So give them skills, take your gun. That's it.
Thank you, Jok and Gail, for sharing your inspiring work with us today. To our listeners, thank you for joining us, and I hope you will decide to be the change you want to see in your own communities, which will make the world safer, more secure, and sustainable for all. Please stay tuned for our next podcast.